The Galactic Council chambers erupted in chaos. Hundreds of different species, from crystalline beings to gaseous entities, all shouting over each other in a cacophony of translated voices. High Councillor Vexathor, a towering figure with iridescent scales, slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor 3 times, sending reverberating booms through the massive chamber. "Order! We will have order in this emergency session," he thundered, his translator working overtime to convey his fury in over 1,000 different languages. The chambers gradually fell silent, save for the occasional whisper and rustle of various appendages. At the center of the circular chamber stood Supreme Commander Kraxathar of the Craxian Empire, his metallic exoskeleton gleaming under the artificial lights. His 4 arms were crossed in what the Council recognized as a gesture of supreme irritation. "Honorable Council," Kraxathar's voice carried an artificial smoothness that barely concealed his contempt. "The situation is simple. The species known as humans have refused our generous offer of protection and guidance. They dare to assert their independence in a galaxy they barely understand." A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. The Craxians were known for their protective services, a euphemism for their practice of subjugating lesser species under the guise of mentorship. "Perhaps," came a melodious voice from the shadows, "the humans simply require more time to understand the benefits of Craxian protection." This was Ambassador Linra of the Luminous Concordat, her bioluminescent form pulsing with gentle colors. Kraxathar's mechanical laughter echoed through the chamber. "Time? They responded to our offer by launching primitive nuclear weapons at our scout ships. These Deathworlders need to be taught their place in the galactic hierarchy." The word Deathworlders sent another wave of whispers through the chamber. Everyone knew about species that evolved on high-gravity, high-radiation planets. They were usually tough, resilient, and completely insane by galactic standards. "The humans have a saying," Kraxathar continued, pulling up a holographic display. "They call it Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. How fitting that we shall prove them right." The hologram showed Earth, a blue marble suspended in space. Several red dots appeared around it, Craxian warships moving into position. "The humans think they're clever." Kraxathar's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "They've been secretly building up their defenses since our first contact. Primitive kinetic weapons, nuclear arsenals, even some rudimentary energy shields. But they forget. We've been conquering worlds since their ancestors were swinging in trees." High Councillor Vexathor leaned forward, his scales shifting from iridescent to a deep purple of concern. "And what exactly do you plan to do, Supreme Commander?" Kraxathar's 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of mock benevolence. "We're going to give them one last chance to surrender. And when they refuse, because these primitive apes are nothing if not predictably stubborn, we will show them exactly why the Craxian Empire has ruled this sector for 10,000 years. The chamber erupted once again, but this time in nervous laughter and excited chatter. After all, what chance did a primitive species have against the might of the Craxian Empire? None of them noticed the small human observer in the back of the chamber, quietly recording everything with a barely concealed smirk on her face. The United Earth Defense Council sat in stunned silence as the holographic message from Supreme Commander Kraxathar flickered before them. His metallic voice filled the underground bunker beneath Geneva. "You have 24 Earth hours to submit to Craxian protection. Your weapons will be confiscated, your military disbanded, and your resources reallocated for the greater good of the galaxy. Refuse and face annihilation." Commander Alex Rivera, a stocky man with a perpetual half-smile and a reputation for being criminally optimistic in the face of certain doom, broke the silence with a hearty laugh. "Well, that's generous of them. Usually when someone tries to rob you, they don't give you a full day's notice." The council members turned to stare at him. Rivera shrugged, the scars on his face crinkling as his smile widened. "Come on, people. They're giving us exactly what we need. Time." "Time to dig our own graves," General Thompson growled, his weathered face lined with worry. Rivera stood up, walking to the central holographic display. "Time to spring our trap. You see, our little friend at the Galactic Council sent us something interesting." He gestured, and the display changed to show technical specifications of Craxian warships. "They think we're primitive apes who just figured out how to throw rocks really fast. But here's the funny thing about humans. We're really good at figuring out how to throw rocks in exciting new ways." The display changed again, showing Earth's orbital defense grid. What the Craxians saw as primitive kinetic weapons platforms were actually housing something far more interesting. "Project Pandora," Rivera announced with theatrical flair, "named after another story about giving someone exactly what they asked for, and then some." A young diplomat raised her hand. "Shouldn't we try to negotiate? Maybe we could—" "Oh, we're going to negotiate," Rivera interrupted cheerfully. "In fact, we're going to send them the most diplomatic response in human history. Ambassador Chen, would you do the honors?" Ambassador Chen, an elegant woman with steel-grey hair and a poker face that had won her 6 intergalactic poker championships, not that the aliens knew that was what they were playing, stood up. "I've prepared our official response. Would you like to hear it?" The council nodded. Chen cleared her throat and read from her tablet. "Dear Supreme Commander Craxithar, regarding your generous offer of protection, nuts." Rivera's laughter echoed through the chamber. "Perfect. Straight out of the Battle of the Bulge playbook. They won't even understand the reference, which makes it better." "Commander," General Thompson interjected, "this isn't a joke. They have us surrounded with the most powerful fleet in this sector of the galaxy." Rivera's smile turned predatory. "Exactly. They have us surrounded, which means we can't miss." He turned to the council, his voice dropping its humorous edge. "Ladies and gentlemen, for the past year since first contact, they've seen exactly what we wanted them to see. They think our orbital platforms are primitive mass drivers. They think our ground-based lasers are simple point defense weapons. They think we're scared, disorganized, and ripe for conquest." He paused for dramatic effect. "Let's show them why you should never corner a species that turned surviving on a death world into an extreme sport." The response was transmitted to the Craxian fleet. As Rivera walked out of the chamber, he began humming an old tune. Several council members recognized it. "The Flight of the Valkyries." It was going to be an interesting day. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. Nova Blake watched her life's work power up for the first time. The massive chamber hummed with energy as the quantum core spun to life, bathing everything in a soft blue glow. "Power output at 15% and rising," announced her assistant through the intercom. "No anomalies detected." Nova ran her fingers through her silver-streaked black hair, a nervous habit she'd never managed to break. 20 years of theoretical work, 5 years of practical development, and now they'd find out if humans could pull off the impossible. "Dr. Blake," Commander Rivera's voice boomed through the lab as he strode in, still wearing that infuriating grin. "Please tell me you've got good news. Our new friends upstairs are getting antsy." Nova pointed to the central display. "See those energy signatures? The Craxians use quantum-locked shields on their warships, unbreakable by conventional standards, but there's something they never considered." "Because they think we're too primitive to understand quantum mechanics," Rivera finished, his grin widening. "Exactly. They've been spacefaring for so long, they forgot one crucial thing about evolution on a death world." Nova brought up a simulation. "When every other creature on your planet is trying to kill you, you get really good at finding weak points." The simulation showed a Craxian warship, its shields glowing. Then came a tiny point of light, Nova's weapon. The shields didn't just fail, they imploded, taking the ship with them. "I call it the quantum lockpick," Nova announced proudly. "It doesn't try to break their shields. It convinces their shields to break themselves." Meanwhile, in high orbit, the Craxian fleet was arranging itself in textbook invasion formation. Supreme Commander Craxithar stood on his bridge, watching tactical displays with smug satisfaction. "Status report," he commanded. Earth's defensive grid remains unchanged, Supreme Commander. Their primitive kinetic weapons pose no threat to our shields. We detect increased power usage in several ground facilities, likely their attempt at strengthening their defenses. Kraxathar's metallic laughter filled the bridge. How typical of Deathworlders, always fighting until the bitter end. Prepare the first wave of shock troops. Let's show them what real warfare looks like. Back in the mountain facility, Rivera was reviewing the final preparations with his command staff. The holographic war room showed Earth's true defensive capabilities, carefully hidden from Craxian scanners through a combination of technological camouflage and good old-fashioned misdirection. They're positioning themselves exactly where we want them, Captain Marcus Rodriguez reported, highlighting key tactical positions. Their formation is optimized against conventional weapons. They have no idea what's coming. What about civilian casualties? Someone asked. Nova stepped forward. The quantum lockpick only affects quantum lock systems. No collateral damage to Earth or its inhabitants. Though I should mention... She paused, looking slightly embarrassed. There might be some rather spectacular light shows. The quantum cascade effect can be quite... colourful. Rivera laughed. You're telling me we're not just going to defeat them, we're going to do it with fireworks? That's the most human thing I've ever heard. A junior officer burst into the room. Commander, the Craxians are broadcasting on all frequencies. The holographic display shifted to show Kraxathar's imposing figure. Humans, your time has expired. Your pathetic defenses are nothing against the might of the Craxian Empire. Surrender now, or... Rivera cut the transmission mid-sentence. You know what I hate most about these guys? The monologuing. They're worse than comic book villains. He turned to Nova. Doctor, is everything ready? Nova checked her tablet one last time. Throughout the facility, dozens of quantum lockpicks powered up, their targeting systems linking with Earth's primitive defense grid. Similar weapons were activating in hidden bases around the world, each one carefully calibrated to exploit the Craxians' greatest strength and turn it into their greatest weakness. Ready when you are, Commander, Nova confirmed, though I should warn you, this is all theoretical. We've never actually tested it against a real Craxian ship. Rivera's grin turned wolfish. Well then, I guess this counts as peer review. Let's show these bullies why humans have a reputation for nasty surprises. Above them, the Craxian fleet began its advance, completely unaware they were flying into the galaxy's most elaborate trap. The first Craxian shot lit up Earth's atmosphere like a second sun. Their energy weapons, designed to overwhelm planetary shields, slammed into the seemingly defenseless planet. In the orbital command station designated Sitting Duck, a name that had made Commander Rivera laugh for 10 straight minutes, Captain Maya Chen watched the incoming fire with practiced calm. Her augmented reality display showed exactly what the Craxians thought they were seeing. A primitive space station scrambling to raise emergency shields. Status report, she commanded, her voice steady as the station shuddered under another blast. Craxian fleet advancing on projected vectors, Captain. Their targeting systems are fully committed to their initial attack plan. Lieutenant Park's fingers danced across his console. They're falling for it. Hook, line, and sinker. Maya allowed herself a small smile. Begin Operation Stage Magic. Let's show them our first trick. The supposedly primitive defense platforms around Earth suddenly shifted, revealing their true nature. What the Craxians had dismissed as simple mass drivers transformed, panels sliding away to expose Nova's quantum lockpicks. This is Chen to all stations, Maya broadcast. Execute primary sequence on my mark. Down in the mountain facility, Nova watched her displays light up. Power signature nominal. Quantum entanglement field stable. Ready on your command, Captain. The Craxian fleet pressed forward, their formation perfect for attacking a primitive civilization. Supreme Commander Kraxathar stood triumphant on his bridge. See how their defenses crumble. These humans will learn their place in the Gal. Mark! Maya's command triggered a symphony of destruction. Dozens of quantum lockpicks fired simultaneously, each targeting a different Craxian vessel. There was no beam, no visible projectile, just a precise pulse of quantum information that turned the Craxians' own shields against them. The result was spectacular. The first wave of Craxian ships didn't explode. They imploded, their quantum-locked shields collapsing inward in a cascade of blue-white energy. The ships crumpled like aluminum cans in a crusher, their supposedly impenetrable defenses becoming their coffins. "By the eternal void!" Craxithar's mechanical voice actually cracked. "What sorcery is this?" "Sir," his tactical officer screamed, "they're weapons! They're not in our database! They're targeting our shield matrix directly!" Maya's voice cut through all Craxian communication channels. "Attention, Craxian fleet! Perhaps you'd like to reconsider your position on human primitiveness? We've got plenty more party tricks to show you." In the mountain facility, Rivera watched the battle unfold with undisguised glee. "Dr. Blake, I believe you just revolutionized space warfare. How does it feel?" Nova barely looked up from her monitors. "Ask me again when we've survived this. The quantum lockpicks need 15 seconds to recharge, and the Craxians still outnumber us 5-1. "Then it's time for trick number 2, Maya announced over the command channel. "Commander Rivera, you have a go for Operation Royal Flush." Rivera's grin turned predatory. "Launch the swarm." What the Craxians had dismissed as space debris around Earth suddenly came to life. Thousands of microsatellites, each barely larger than a coffee can, activated simultaneously. They moved with an agility that defied conventional space combat doctrine, swarming toward the Craxian fleet like angry hornets. "These humans are insane," someone screamed over the Craxian command channel. "They're using their own satellites as kinetic weapons." But that wasn't the real surprise. As the swarm approached, each microsatellite began broadcasting a specific quantum frequency, one that played havoc with Craxian targeting systems. The trap was sprung. Now it was time to see if humanity's bag of tricks was deep enough to win not just the battle, but the war. Supreme Commander Craxithar watched in horror as his perfect invasion force descended into chaos. The human microsatellites danced through his formation, their quantum broadcasts turning his fleet's sophisticated targeting systems into expensive paperweights. Each time his ships tried to lock onto a target, the swarm would shift, creating false positives across every sensor array. "Recalibrate the targeting systems," he roared. "Switch to manual control if you have to." "Sir, we can't—" His tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. "These quantum signals, they're not just jamming our targets, they're learning." In the mountain facility, Nova allowed herself a triumphant smile as she watched the data streams pour in. The quantum AI network is fully operational. Each satellite is now adapting to Craxian countermeasures in real time. Rivera whistled low. "You didn't just give them a new weapon, did you, Doc? You gave them a whole new kind of warfare." "The Craxians think quantum mechanics is just for shields and computers," Nova explained, her fingers flying across her control panel. "They never considered using it for artificial intelligence. Every one of those satellites is running a quantum neural network, sharing information faster than light itself." On the sitting duck station, Captain Chen coordinated the assault with surgical precision. "All units, execute Pattern Delta. Time to show them why humans love fireworks." The swarm suddenly converged, forming intricate geometric patterns that seemed to defy physics. Each satellite began broadcasting on a different quantum frequency, creating a web of interference that played havoc with Craxian systems. "What are they doing?" Craxithar demanded as his ship's displays went haywire. The tactical display showed thousands of potential targets where there should be only hundreds. "This is impossible. They're primitives." "Actually," Maya's voice cut through their comm systems again, "we're gamers, and we've spent centuries practicing something you seem to have forgotten, thinking outside the box." The swarm split into 3 distinct formations, each targeting a different section of the Craxian fleet. As the enemy ships tried to regroup, the quantum lockpicks finished recharging. "Fire sequence 2, Maya commanded. This time, the quantum pulses weren't aimed at the Craxian shields, they targeted the space between the ships. Nova's voice crackled over the command channel. Quantum entanglement field reaching critical mass. 3, 2, 1. The space between the Craxian vessels erupted in a cascade of quantum interactions. Ships that had maintained perfect formation now found themselves quantum-locked to each other, their shields merging and twisting in ways their designers had never imagined possible. "By the eternal void," Craxithar whispered, as he watched entire squadrons of his ships fuse into abstract sculptures of metal and energy. "What have they done?" Rivera's laugh echoed through all channels. "We took your greatest strength and turned it into abstract art. I'm thinking of calling this piece Hubris in Space. What do you think?" But the Craxians weren't finished yet. The remaining ships, nearly half the original fleet, began executing emergency protocols. Their quantum shields dropped, switching to conventional energy barriers. "Predictable," Nova muttered. "Captain Chen, they're doing exactly what we expected, initiating Phase 3. The swarm reformed once again, this time creating a massive sphere around the remaining Craxian fleet. Each satellite began broadcasting a new frequency, not to jam their systems, but to deliver a payload that Nova had spent years perfecting. What is this?" A Craxian officer's panicked voice cut through the chaos. "Our navigation systems are receiving some kind of data package. It's rewriting our core protocols." "That's impossible," Craxithar roared. "Our systems are quantum encrypted." "Were quantum encrypted," Nova corrected through the open channel. "You see, while you were busy looking down on us primitives, we were studying your encryption. And we found something interesting. It's based on a mathematical principle that hasn't been updated in 10,000 years. You got complacent." The swarm pulsed with energy, each satellite transmitting a fraction of Nova's virus. It slipped through the Craxians' outdated quantum encryption like a hot knife through butter, spreading from ship to ship through their own communication networks. "This is your final warning," Maya announced as the trap closed. "Your weapons are disabled. Your engines are locked. Every system on your ships is now running on human protocols. You can surrender, or we can demonstrate what happens when you really make us angry." In the mountain facility, Rivera turned to Nova with newfound respect. "Doctor, remind me never to get on your bad side." Nova shrugged, but couldn't hide her satisfied smile. "I just gave them what they wanted, a demonstration of primitive human ingenuity." Above Earth, the Craxian fleet hung motionless, their mighty warships now nothing more than very expensive satellites. Supreme Commander Craxithar, for the first time in his long career, found himself completely speechless. Commander Rivera stood in the war room, surveying the holographic display of Earth's orbital space. The Craxian fleet hung suspended in his trap, their ships powerless but not yet defeated. He straightened his uniform and cleared his throat. "Supreme Commander Craxithar, I believe this is the part where you surrender unconditionally, unless you'd prefer to see what else we primitive humans have up our sleeves." The response came after a long pause, Craxithar's mechanical voice stripped of its usual arrogance. You planned this from the beginning." "Actually," Rivera grinned, "we planned for something much worse. This was just Plan A. Would you like to see Plan B? Dr. Blake has been dying to test her other inventions." Nova looked up from her console, eyes gleaming. "The quantum cascade initiators are ready, Commander. One word, and we can turn their entire fleet into a very expensive light show." On the sitting duck station, Captain Chen's fingers hovered over her command console. The swarm of satellites had reformed into attack positions, ready to execute the final phase of Rivera's master plan. "Sir," Lieutenant Park reported, "we're detecting power fluctuations in the Craxian command ship. They're trying to reset their systems." Maya's voice cut through the tension. "Commander, should we proceed with Protocol Omega?" Rivera's grin widened. "Supreme Commander, I'm afraid we can't wait for your answer much longer. You see, we humans have another saying, go big or go home." He nodded to Nova, who initiated a sequence that made every screen in the facility light up with cascading data. The satellite swarm suddenly pulsed with brilliant blue energy, creating a web of quantum connections between every disabled Craxian vessel. "What you're seeing," Nova announced over the open channel, is what happens when you underestimate human creativity. We're not just going to defeat your fleet, we're going to repurpose it. The quantum web tightened, and suddenly every Craxian ship's quantum core synchronized to a human-controlled frequency. Their mighty warships, pride of the Empire, were now part of Earth's defense network. "That's impossible," Craxathar bellowed. "Our quantum cores are genetically locked to Craxian DNA." Rivera laughed. "Oh, that? Yeah, we cracked your genetic encryption last week. Turns out it's not that different from solving a Rubik's Cube. Just had to look at it from the right angle." Maya's voice carried unmistakable satisfaction as she reported, "All Craxian vessels successfully integrated into Earth Defense Grid, Commander. Their weapons, shields, and propulsion systems are now permanently locked to human control protocols." "You know what the really funny part is?" Rivera addressed the stunned Craxian commander. "We could have done this months ago, but we wanted to wait until you committed your entire invasion fleet. Call it a lesson in human psychology. We don't just want to win, we want to win spectacularly." Nova's quantum network began systematically downloading every scrap of Craxian military data, technical specifications, and strategic information. Their mighty empire's secrets laid bare by the species they had dismissed as primitives. "Commander," Maya reported, "the Galactic Council is requesting an emergency broadcast. Apparently they're quite interested in how a primitive species just captured the most powerful fleet in the sector." Rivera straightened his uniform again, this time with theatrical flair. "Well then, let's not keep them waiting. Dr. Blake, Captain Chen, shall we show the galaxy exactly why you never corner a species that turned survival into an art form?" The response came from every human facility, station, and ship in perfect unison. "Yes, Commander." Above Earth, the defeated Craxian fleet began moving into its new configuration. A permanent reminder that humanity's best defense had always been its capacity for devastating innovation. The Galactic Council chambers were dead silent as Commander Rivera finished his presentation. The holographic display showed the former Craxian fleet now permanently integrated into Earth's defense network. High Counselor Vexathor's scales had turned an interesting shade of pale green. "So let me understand this correctly. You not only defeated the Craxian Empire's main fleet, but also acquired their entire military database?" "Oh, that's not all," Rivera smiled, gesturing to Dr. Nova Blake. "Doctor, would you like to share the good news?" Nova stepped forward, her tablet displaying a complex series of equations. "We've discovered that the Craxians have been using the same quantum encryption protocols to control every fleet in their empire. Thanks to their genetic arrogance, we now have access to, well, everything." The chamber erupted in chaos. Ambassador Linra's bioluminescence flickered rapidly. "You mean the Craxian Empire's entire military force now belongs to Earth?" Rivera confirmed cheerfully. "We're calling it the galaxy's largest corporate acquisition." Supreme Commander Craxathar, now under guard, sparked with mechanical fury. "You primitives planned this from the start!" "Actually," Maya's voice came from the back of the chamber, where she'd been quietly recording everything, just like she had during the first meeting. "We planned something much smaller. You just had to go and be so predictably arrogant about it." Rivera addressed the Council with a predatory smile. "Earth is now officially applying for Galactic Council membership, unless, of course, anyone has any objections." The silence was deafening. "Perfect." Rivera clapped his hands together. "Oh, and one more thing. We're thinking of offering our protection services to any worlds that might need them. After all, the galaxy can be such a dangerous place for primitive species." The last thing the Council heard as the humans left was Nova's voice. "You know what the best part is? We haven't even shown them our really interesting inventions yet."